Alright, so we have our project set up and our image saved in the appropriate folder for our project to access easily. The next step is we're going to set up two image planes as references that we'll use to start developing this robot model. So I'm in the default view. Under the plus or the create palette here, I'm going to choose plane. And the first plane, well, before I do this actually, I want to go to customize, and under that I'm going to choose unit setup, and I want to make sure we're in metric units. Alright, and what that basically is going to mean is each one of these larger squares that you see in the grid is going to be a meter, so that's going to match what we're using in Unity. So when we put our character in Unity, it should match up pretty well. All right, so I believe each one of the larger units here, we'll test that out later, but I think actually let's test it out now as we create this. So you see that if you zoom out with your scroll middle mouse button, you'll see there's larger square grids, and when you zoom in, you can see that there are smaller square grids. And as I make this, you're going to see the length in meters go up or down as you create it. So choose plane here, and I'm going to try to outline best I can this square here, and we'll see how large that represents, or what that represents. Okay, so this represents each one of the larger pieces, it looks like, represents 2.5. I went a little bit over 2.5 meters. So that means you can resize these by dragging the arrows down. And if I zoom in even further, you can see that this is pretty close to 1 meter. All right. And this guy, you can zoom down to 1 meter as well. So you can use the tool to drag it down, or you can actually just type it in there. You can just do 1.0 meter there and be real precise here. And this one will be 1.0 meters here. All right, so now I have a meter by meter plane. And why that's important is you want things to be to scale when you import them into Unity. So as you develop models in 3ds Max, you want to make sure that they are created in the appropriate scale. Unity uses meters, so you can kind of convert that. So the average person, if you want this robot to be as large as a person, I guess is under 6 feet. I guess it's about 5'8", 5'9". And a meter is roughly 3.5 feet. So if we did 1 meter, we're at 3.5 feet. So we have kind of a shorter robot. If we raise it up to 2 meters, we'll have a 7-foot robot. So that's too much. So I'm just going to do 1.5 for the length on the top. And actually, I'm going to make it 2 because you'll see on the image plane that we have some space. So the image plane is our reference. It doesn't have to be the exact same size. Sometimes it will be, sometimes it won't be. All right. So we've created the correct size. Now I'm going to use the move tool to move it to 0, 0 for right now. We might move this a little bit more later. There's a lot to this stuff as we go. So I might break this up into a couple of videos. So that's the first part. All right. Now you'll notice in this perspective view, you can see that it has a solid view, and here it's more of a wireframe. To change that, we can choose, instead of wireframe, we can do default shading. So now you can kind of see that. The wireframe is nice, so you can see all of the lines that are drawn there and kind of the segments for this piece. After you get out of the creation menu, by the way, and you'll notice that you no longer have the length and segments and all of those things. So we're going to get into that stuff later, but that's under modify. You get those, you can have those tools back. All right, so I'm going to go back to default shading, and the next piece I'm going to do is load a material, create a material, so that we can put our image on the background here of this plane here. So the materials editor is right up here, just left of the teapot and the gear icon. So I'm going to click that. And this is the one that you want. Sometimes you will get, if you hold it down, you could get this menu here. All right. This one's good for just default shading, but we want the editor so we can create our own, basically our own textures for this stuff, our own shaders. All right, so this comes up, and we're going to use a standard. So just drag that out here, standard material, and you want to double click on the name, change it from material number 25 to front robot, we'll call it plane. All right, front robot plane. All right, next we're going to take a bitmap and drag that out. And this is where, if you put your image in the correct place like we have, it pops right up. If your image is not in that folder, you notice it goes into robots, scene assets, and images like I showed you in the previous video, then it's hard to find. But since ours is right there, it's easy to select and choose open. So now this bitmap is attached to this piece, and we're just going to connect it here. And I believe it's going to go to ambient color. All right, yeah, I think that's where it's going to go. We'll test this out in a minute. All right, so the shader is connected to the default, or the bitmap. Let me zoom out a little bit, move this. All right, so now there's a couple of buttons we're going to work on. One of them is this guy, show shaded material in viewport. These are our viewports, and this is a material, and we want to be able to see that. So we're going to turn that on. All right, you'll notice that this changes to a red and blue, or red and green symbol. The next thing is, well, we got to select our object. Yeah, so select the object that you want to apply it to, and then assign material to selection. All right, so that was right. This was a correct connection. I remembered correctly. Okay, so this is all finished for now. We're going to close it. And then what you're going to see is you have your front reference all set. We're going to get more into this later, but I think I'm going to stop right there. We're also going to set up a side, but you can kind of see, and if you want to see this view, it's highlighted. Each view, when you select it, it's highlighted. All right, and you can use, I believe it's Alt-W, or maximize viewport, or this button. So I'm going to hold Alt down and choose W, and now you can kind of see this whole scene kind of all in one. All right, so next video we're going to create one for the side, and then we're going to organize this a little bit better. But I'll stop right there to get you guys caught up.